The story begins with a girl narrating a situation that happened not too long ago when two immense forces battled for control of Alneath. On one side were the mortals, with their limited, fleeting lives. On the other side were the Immortals, a group of beings freed from the chains of death. A massive war between these two groups split the world in two, and the fate of everything rested in the hands of two men. One of them was Graham, the hero who wielded the sacred sword given by the goddess. The other was the Demon Lord, commander of the Immortals, also known as Veltol Velvet Velsvalt. The war, which seemed endless, reached its climax on the 10th day of the second month of the dragon. On that day, everything was decided, and with the blink of an eye, the battle ended, with Graham emerging victorious. In a surprising gesture, the Demon Lord congratulated his opponent for the victory, admiring his courage. Graham, in turn, returned the compliment, saying that the demon was also very strong. But deep down, the Demon Lord wondered why he had lost that battle. After all, he was superior to Graham in every way, plus he was immortal. He was stronger, more experienced, and theoretically invincible. That's when the hero explained the reason. It's because, being immortal, you don't understand the value of we, the mortals, live with the awareness that our time is limited. That's why we do everything in our power to make the most of the time we have and become stronger. The Demon Lord, upon hearing this, scoffed, saying that such a superficial reason could never explain his defeat. But Graham insisted, that's it. It's the light that mortals have, something you immortals will never understand. The Demon Lord then warned, be careful with that light. Where there is light, there are always shadows. And as long as those shadows exist, I will always be standing before the light, facing the hero. Amid this brief dialogue, the Demon Lord bids farewell, saying that Graham was, in fact, his greatest enemy. Watching him disappear, the hero also acknowledges him as his most hated enemy. With that, he turns his back and heads home. Meanwhile, the girl continues narrating the story of that world, revealing how it managed to survive after the fierce battle. At the same time, the Demon Lord, Veltol Velvet Velsvalt, awakens to a familiar voice calling his name. The owner of the voice introduces herself as maou, a member of the 6 pairs of shadow, also known as the Duchess of the Dazzling Flame. She reveals that she had been waiting for this moment for 500 years, and given the gravity of the situation, apologizes for receiving him in inappropriate attire. Veltol, however, dismisses the detail, as he is already satisfied that maou witnessed the completion of Noel's reincarnation ritual and was present during his rebirth. After hearing this, he asks where exactly they are. Maou responds, informing him that they are in the underground cathedral of the Endor dungeon, beneath the old Shinjo station. Upon hearing this, Veltol asks her to join him once again so they can continue with the plan to dominate Alneath. However, maou has something to report. She explains that the world they were supposed to rule is no longer the same, as it suffered a devastating catastrophe more than 80 years ago. Alneath and Earth were both affected by a catastrophic event, later known as Phantas. This event caused such a seismic shift that within the first 3 years, 90% of the population was wiped out. As a result, national governments lost control, and cities became independent states, governing themselves. 2 major wars arose between these city-states, but maou clarifies that, finally, the wounds of these conflicts have begun to heal. She explains that the current state of the era they live in is one where Earth's industrial civilization boasts advanced technology, while the local civilization in Alneath uses magical technology. The fusion of these 2 forms of technology, seemingly so different, led to rapid progress. And it is in this era of fusion, in 2099, that they now live. Hearing all this, Veltol is surprised.
What is this madness?
He had never imagined that mortal civilization had advanced this far. In the middle of the conversation, a random man bumps into Veltol, apologizing for being distracted by his own thoughts. Soon after, Veltol attempts to use one of his spells to scare the locals. However, when they see that it was merely a manipulation of the weather, they simply ignore the act and call him a fool. Machina then warns him that he cannot use magic within the city, and, with a firm tug on his arm, begins pulling him out of the awkward situation he created. As she drags him along, Veltol questions why he has to lower himself and run away like this. However, Machina proceeds without paying much attention to his doubts, simply pulling him away from the crowd. As they walk, Machina explains the current situation. She mentions that, after Veltol's death, a ceasefire was established between the Immortals and the Mortals. However, 80 years ago, the disturbance caused by Phantas forced the Immortals from the Immortal Kingdom to relocate to the main cities. Shortly after, a movement led by the major industries emerged, known as the Hunt for the Immortals. In this movement, the Immortals were treated as dangerous creatures rather than people, becoming targets for mass extermination. With the advancement of mag engineering, anti-immortal weapons were produced in large quantities, further facilitating the extermination of these beings. Veltol is intrigued and asks what happened to the 6 pairs of shadows, his allies. Machina replies that the whereabouts of my shields and Hyen are still unknown. As for Zeno, he acted as Iska and attacked the enemy so that Machina could escape the battle alive. During the process, Zeno supposedly said that he was doing it for Veltol, as Hausen and Machina were the only ones who knew how to activate the Met Noel, and therefore she needed to stay alive to complete this task. Upon hearing this, Veltol reflects on Zeno's loyalty, recognizing that he was always a man of great fidelity. However, he quickly returns to the main issue and asks about what happened to Marcus of the Bloody Arts. When Machina hears the question, she attempts to shift the conversation, suggesting that Veltol should go out to get some water. She explains that, although he isn't thirsty, the city's polluted air could harm his throat, and he needs to stay hydrated. With that, Machina quickly leaves him behind, promising to return with the water soon. As she walks away, a young girl begins hacking the public ads of the city, replacing the commercial with a completely harmless movie. Veltol, noticing her actions, calls out to her. She is surprised to see that he discovered she was the one who hacked the ads. Veltol then says that, although he noticed the girl's actions, he is unable to understand the principle behind the technique. He admits that she is, in fact, an expert in this area. Hearing this apparent compliment, the girl becomes a little embarrassed and responds that she didn't do anything that impressive. She explains that, in reality, she is an ordinary citizen who faces dangerous jobs that could cost her life. She then begins to explain more about the hack she used recently. She mentions that there is a fatal vulnerability in the logical barrier and, in the program, used to create the advertisements in the city of Shinjo. Taking this into consideration, she was able to hack the ads easily and replace the content with something of her own choosing. She explains that, by doing so, she was rebelling against the system, believing that freedom should be unrestricted. However, she notes that the company responsible for the ads likely doesn't share the same view. As she passionately talks about her punk ideology, Veltol interrupts, returning to his mission, and asks about the whereabouts of a man named Marcus. Upon hearing this name, the girl points to a building and says that the place is called Ichme. At that moment, Veltol heads directly there. Upon arrival, he is greeted by a receptionist who welcomes him to the company. Veltol, not wasting any time, gets straight to the point and asks her to inform Marcus of his presence. Soon after, Marcus's personal secretary, Kinohara, appears and introduces herself. She leads him to Marcus's office. When Veltol arrives, he goes straight to the point and asks Marcus to help him rebuild the mortal kingdom and dominate the world once again. However, upon hearing this request, Marcus begins to laugh and immediately refuses, saying he will not help him with anything. Veltol, feeling belittled, tries to attack him, but Kinohara acts faster and strikes first. With a mocking smile, Marcus tells Kinohara that it's fine and asks her to step back. He continues mocking Veltol, explaining that the same wound he suffered in the past, which should have healed instantly, still hasn't closed, making it clear that Veltol is weak. Marcus then states that as long as he remains in this state, he will never be able to dominate the world. Moreover, Marcus makes it clear that he will never lower his head to someone as incapable as Veltol. Soon, Veltol insists on attacking Marcus again, believing that this time he would be able to overcome his opponent. However, Marcus easily breaks Veltol's spell and explains that he obtained all that power through the fruit of the wisdom of humanity, the latest innovation from mag engineering. He explains that to activate the magic, one must go through a 5-step process: construction, expansion, enchantment, and proclamation. However, with the device that controls the Emi family, it is possible to skip 3 of these steps, making the magic process much more efficient. Additionally, Marcus reveals that the device was designed to be incapable of being used by incorporeal beings like Veltol. This means that Veltol will not have access to the device, and his situation becomes even more difficult. With that, Veltol asks Marcus why he is doing all of this. Marcus, with a look of disdain, responds that he has never tolerated Veltol from the beginning, always considering him a tyrant. He then uses his magic to throw Veltol out of his company. As Veltol is thrown out, Machina finds him on the ground, even being attacked by common citizens of the city. She apologizes for not warning him about Marcus's betrayal earlier, but Veltol replies that if she had done so, he would have been even more determined to confront the traitor and put an end to this once and for all. She takes him to her house, and Veltol is surprised to see that she lives in such a simple and small place. Machina explains that her salary is low, and that this was the best place she could afford in the city. Veltol, moved by the situation, sympathizes as he sees the girl living in such humble conditions. He then places her head on his chest and hugs her, saying that she has been his best and most loyal servant all this time. And so, the girl begins to cry upon hearing these words, after all the suffering she has endured. If you liked the content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.